Hi and welcome back with another tutorial. In this video we will be looking at Zremesher and the subdivision levels, and we will be looking at how we can generate clean topology from our Dynamesh and our decimated meshes. So let's open this demo head female for now. You can do this thing on whatever subtool you have. So let's see. So if you go to the subtool menu, you can see that we have multiple subtool here, eyes and the female head. So let's look at how we can add the subdivision levels first. So in the geometry tab, you can see that there is this divide button here, and you can see the hotkey written next to it, which is Control D. You can see this text appear here. So if you press Control D, you can see that your poly count is increasing, and you can look at also here, which is showing our active mesh count. So our active mesh count is 12,972 polys for this face and 12,110 for the eyes. So if I click on this face and click on divide, and you can see that now our faces count has been multiplied by 4, which has 52,070 right now, and you can see we have a subdivision levels added on top of it here. So if I subdivide it again, and you can see that the poly count is again multiplied by 4, which is right now 208,000. And if I subdivide it again, so it is 833,000. If subdivide again, it's 3.3 million, 3.332 million. So you can press Shift D to go lower on the subdivisions, and you can press D to go move to the higher subdivision. You can also change it from here and go from lower to higher subdivisions level. So I will be covering in detail in the next video of why we use subdivision levels and when to use the Dynamesh. But for now, you just need to know that how to add subdivision levels and how to traverse between subdivision levels. So if you want, for example, let's delete this higher subdivision levels and go through again. So if I want to add a new subdivision level, I'm going to hit Control D or click on this button here, and it will add a new subdivision levels. But if I want to traverse through my subdivision levels, I will have to press Shift D to go down and press D to go up. So let's open some other projects that we used to work on recently. So yeah, so for example, we have a mesh like this, which is a Dynamesh mesh, and it is it cannot be used to rig, animate, or UVs or any of this stuff. So if I want to take this mesh into some other 3D tool and texture it, so I will have to need clean topology, and which is only generated through Zremesher. So if I click on this button, let's duplicate it up, and if I click on this button Zremesher, and you can see there is this bar going on, which is Zbrush saying that it's going to Zremesh it in a few moments. Yeah, so you can see that this is our clean topology. It has some nice clean edge loops. For the faces, if you're doing it for a production or for a game models, so I would recommend you to just retopo it, but you can use the meshes for all the other stuff, for example the clothes and the barrels, and apart from the faces, you can use the Zremesher on almost everything. And for the faces, you can also use the Zremesher, but not for the production mesh. You can use it for just subdividing it up and using subdivision levels. And yeah, so as you can see that now we have a clean mesh, but we don't have all those details that we have sculpted on later, and all those details are on our other mesh, which is this one. So what I want to do right now is project this high level details onto this mesh. So I will be just adding a subdivision level by hitting Ctrl D, and you can see that there is this project tab here, and if I visible my mesh that has the details and all of the nice details on it. So if when projecting the mesh, so there is one active mesh, and it will project all the details of other meshes on top of it. So right now I have one subdivision levels added on it, and if I click on project all, it's projecting all the high level details. It is projecting its mesh on top of the high level details. So if I Ctrl D again and click on project all, and let's hit Ctrl D one more time and it project all, and so this was our Dynamesh, and this is our subdivision mesh. So you can see that there is literally nothing, they're almost the same, but the only difference is that this one has subdivision levels. For example, if I show the wireframe by pressing Shift F, and if I click on this mesh here, you can see that this is Dynamesh and this is our Zremesher. It is very clean. So let me show you some of the difference between these two. So yeah, let's close it up. Yeah, maybe I undid some of the high resolution, so let's just project back the details. Okay, so as you can see that we have all the details. So the reason I prefer using subdivision levels after I have added generated most of my volume using Dynamesh or Sculptress or any other tool. So it is, let me show you something. So if I can just mask it out, and so I will be covering posing and how to use this transpose tool in a later video. So let's not worry about it, like how I'm rotating this up. So I will be covering this in a later video. So if I unmask it by control clicking and dragging, and if I move to a higher subdivision level, so you can see that I have all my details here. But if I do the same thing here on my Dynamesh mesh, so if I just mask it out the same way, you can see that it's a lot slower masking, and you can see that the mask is very sharp. So if I invert the mask by control clicking in the background and press W for the move tool and rotate, so this is the problem with Dynamesh. So it is very difficult to mask one portion from the other, and it is very difficult to just blur the mask. So for example, if I want to blur it, I have to tap here again and again and again and again. I have to keep tapping on it to blur the mask, and it still won't be that much blur as the subdivision levels. There's still a stretching going on. So I was blurring my mask by control clicking on the mask. So for example here, so control clicking will blur the mask and alt clicking will sharpen the mask on the mesh. If you control click here on the background, it will just invert the mask. So this is masking is very important, as I told you in the first video. So yeah, so there is one other benefit of the subdivision levels. For example, I have some details here So I just click on this spray and select this alpha. So for example, I have this, let's subdivide it up one time. So I have some skin details and I just want to change these fonts, so I can just go on a lower subdivision level and just flat it out, and when I go back to my higher subdivision levels, you can see that all of the details are still here. So if you want to perform some big changes, for example, I want to move this jaw inward and do some changes here, I can just do it however I want. And when I move back to my upper subdivision levels, all of the details will still be there, which is not the case for Dynamesh, because we only have a single subdivision, and because we don't have any subdivision. So if I add my detail here, and I can just, if I'm trying to move or smooth it out, you can see that it will be messing up with all of the details, which is not the case in subdivision levels. We can just easily move or tweak our mesh on the lowest subdivision level, so which is very important and handy while working. So there is one more difference for using subdivision level, which is that subdivision levels are really fast. You can just divide your mesh up to a, so this is my subdivision model, and yeah, so let's see, so I can just divide it again and divide it one more time and divide it one more time again. So right now it's at 56 million, and you can say that I can go super sharp on a subdivision levels, and it won't even slow down my computer. So you can see that all of these details are super sharp. So you can see that these skin pores here, they are super sharp and super clean. So if I want to create a detail of this level on a Dynamesh mesh, so you can see that right now I just cannot sculpt because I have not enough resolution. So if I increase it up to, let's say, 4 million, and it would say a bit more, and you will see the results clearly that it will be slowing my computer, and you can see that it has already slowing my computer on 4 million. It's not going more than 4 million, but let me show you one example from my personal project. So this is the one. Yeah, so here this is the decimated mesh, and you can see that how my PC is getting lagged on when I'm just panning my model. So, and here the same mesh is super fast and super smooth, although there is not much of a difference. The only thing is that here all of these meshes are made with subdivision levels. So you can see that my overall poly count is 77.388 million, and it's still super fast right now, and because all of these are subdivisions. And if I select this mesh, and it's just 11 million, and it is still super laggy right now. So if you're thinking of using Dynamesh for each and everything, I would suggest you to not to do Dynamesh. I would suggest you to just Zremesh it and add subdivision levels. So Dynamesh is also useful when you're working on generating volume. So for example, if you're working on in the industry and your art director says that we need one more horn on our character, or we need some additional mesh on our character, so you can just uh, Dynamesh, add the horn, and then just do a Zremesher and add subdivision level on top of it and project all the details. And Dynamesh is very important for generating the volumes, but you should just do that with the Dynamesh and do rest of the stuff on subdivision levels. Because subdivision levels are super fast, and you can divide a single subtool more than 100 million or 200 million, and it will still not slow down your computer. So I've seen a lot of artists say that my PC is not good, and I just cannot work on anything because it is too slow. Because and most of the time, 99% of the time, I see them sculpting using just the Dynamesh, and which is really a problem. Because yeah, use Dynamesh, it is a very amazing tool, but use it only for generating the volumes. So we were looking at Zremesher. So now that I have covered why to use subdivision levels, I will be showing you how to use all of these tools in Zremesher. So this is our Dynamesh mesh again. So if I Zremesh it, let's duplicate it up first. Let's hide the eyes as well. So this slider here controls the poly count. For example, right now I'm setting the target poly count for 5,000 polygons for the Zremeshed version. So if I just Zremesh it up, it will be somewhere around 5,000 to 6,000 polygons, because it won't give you accurate results ever, but it will stay close to your target limit. So okay, so yeah, let's hide this one. So you can see that it's well, way more than what we originally intended, which was 5,000 polygons. So if I just take it a little bit down at 1,000, and still it's 3,000 here. So it is important how you at what polygon do you require, and at what polygon do you want your meshes to be projected. So let's do some other things as well. So for example, if in some cases you don't get your topology right, for example, subdivide it. So if in some cases you're not getting the topology you want, for example, you can suggest, you want to suggest Zbrush to keep circular edge loops around the eyes, and circular edge loops around the mouth, and circular edge loops around the horns. And in some cases, Zremesh will just neglect the pointy edges. This is not pointy in this case, but in some cases it might neglect the pointy edges, and it will smooth them out in the Zremeshed version. So like this, maybe it was super pointy. No, it wasn't super pointy. So in some cases it might lose the detail. So you can suggest Zbrush by using Zremesher guides. Here, if you can press B, you can see that we have this brush here, Zremesher guide. Okay, so what I can do right now is this was our high resolution mesh, so I can just add a circular edge loop here, add a circular edge loop here, and then cut through like this. And I am suggesting Zbrush that if it's possible for you, then you can make these parts have circular edge loops following through. So So for these edges that are hanging out, you can just click Alt and remove those like this. And for this pointy edges part, for these horns, you can just drag and hold Control and Shift, and you can see that it is snapping a circular curve around it, and which is very important and very handy as well. So you can just snap these type of circular curves around the edges, and you are suggesting Zremesher to use these guides and control the edge loops on these parts. Well, it is just a suggestion. If you want really clean and super nice topology, you can just use the retopo brush. We'll be covering retopo brush in another video. Right now we are just looking at this Zremesher. So right now you can see that it tried to follow the curves that we drawn, but it's not so accurate. Here you can see that it did try it here as well, but not so successfully. So it's just a suggestion. Zbrush will try to follow it, but it may not get you what you want, but it is still super clean and super useful for the subdivision levels. There is also this curve strength, which is has been set to 50, and you can increase and decrease and test with the curve strength in some cases. And there is also this button here, use polypaint, and let's see what it does. So let's clean all these curves here. Yeah. So if we click here, use polypaint, and you can see that there is this color density slider here, and if we just change, just look at this button here. So when I'm changing this color density slider, you can see that it's moving from blue to red. So if I paint blue on this model, it will have smaller polygons on those locations, but if I paint red on this model, then it will have a higher density polys on those parts. So for example, let's paint it up with colorful object. So let's paint it up default by this, and let's move to the paintbrush and just paint it. You can just paint it with the standard brush. So let's select standard brush, set the alpha to off, turn off the add, click on the RGB, and just paint it. Let's increase the color density a bit more and paint here, and let's increase the color density a bit more and paint here on the edges. And let's remesh it, and you can see that it will be adding more topology on the eyes and the lips, and less topology on the horns and the other stuff. So you can clearly see that this portion has more topology than this portion on the horns. You can see that there are smaller polygons and dense geometry, and there is bigger polygons and less resolution here. So it is super useful for 90% of the cases. When you are remeshing it up, you won't need these Zremesher guides, or you won't need this to paint some different poly paint variations to generate different resolution on your mesh. But in some cases you might need to use these ones as well. So there are other things in Zremesher. For example, we have these button here, which is freeze border, keep creases, keep groups, and freeze groups. So right now we haven't covered we haven't covered this groups, creases, and detect edges. Let's see. So let's go to the cylinder and make polymesh 3D. So what I did right here, so if you have this object and you want to sculpt on it, you cannot, because right now you can see that if I'm clicking and dragging on this mesh, I'm not able to sculpt, because right now by default this is not polymesh 3D. So if I click on this make polymesh 3D, then I will be able to sculpt on it. Yeah, Z add was turned off as well, so yeah, I can sculpt on it right now. So we were looking at Zremesher. So if I Zremesh it right now like this, and you can see that it has messed up this my corner edge. It has smoothed it up, which I didn't want in this case. I want this edge to be super sharp and super crisp. So I can do that by just clicking on this detect edges here and just Zremesh it up, and you can see that we have multiple polygroups, multiple colors, and you can see that there is this edge is still sharp as well. So this is the difference between the Zremesh and the topology before it. You can see that it kept this edge if I just selected this detect edge. So it is very important when you're Zremeshing some hard surface object, you can just select this detect edge button, and it will keep those hard edges on your model. So if I select, you can see that this is a different color, this is different color, and this is different color. So this is what we call the polygroups. So I can easily just mask it out. If I control click on it, you can see that I can just I can just isolate it. So if I control shift click on it, and you can see that I can just isolate it based on the color. If control shift click here, and I can isolate it. So if I press Ctrl and Shift at the same time, you can see that my brush here changes to select brush. So select brush does something like this. So if I Ctrl Shift and draw a rectangle over here, you can see that I am selecting some part of the mesh. And if I Ctrl Shift click and drag in the background, I will be inverting it. Ctrl Shift click and drag. And if I Ctrl Shift and tap, and you can see that now all of this mesh is visible again. So selection is very important, and polygroups are very important as well. For example, this polygroup here, I can just select it one click. You can see right now. So polygroups are really important when quickly masking something out or quickly selecting one part of the object. And if you have some polygroups on your mesh and you want your Zremeshed version to have the same polygroups as well, you can just here keep group, select this keep groups button, and just Zremesh it up, and it will still retain those groups here as well. So we want this detect edges as well, and you can see that it has retained those topology. So you can see that there are some bends here which you don't want right now. I can just select this up and mask this out and smooth it up. So if I didn't have this polygroup here, and if I was smoothing it right now, you can see that I would be really messing up my edges because of this. But because I have polygroups here, I can just isolate it up and sculpt here however I want. And if I invert it and visible all the meshes, you can still see that I have retained this hard edge here right now. So polygroups are super important, and sometimes you need those polygroups in your Zremesher version. And yeah, so there is one more thing that I want to cover. So you can see that these buttons here, and what they does is let's turn off these detect edges and keep groups. So adaptive means that you are setting a number, and Zbrush will try to adapt the density according to your number. For example, before when we were Zremeshing at 5000, it was giving us a mesh of 13,000 polygons because this adaptive was turned on. And there are some buttons next to it which says half, so it will, so whatever amount here we have, it will just try to half those polygons. It will try to Zremesh in half of the amount. Same, it does the same thing. So I don't use these three buttons here. I just change my poly count from this slider here. And there is one more button which is legacy button here, which was the previous Zremesher before 2021 version. So if in some cases, in some very minute 0.001% of the cases, you are Zremeshing and it's not Zremeshing, there is some error shown here like it cannot Zremesh, and then you should try to turn this legacy on and just click on Zremesher here. And yeah, so that's why is because Zremesher is used all the times. I moved it here in my custom UI, and I use it from here. So if you want to work on the same custom UI that I have here, you can just import it. I have already added the link to the description, link to the custom UI in the video description. You can just download it from there, and it is also added on my Patreon along with all the assets. All of the assets on my Patreon page are free, so you can just download those up. So yeah, that was all from me. See you in the next video.